So next, we'll be looking at the section B. Section B is about the external environment. So it is in the learning outcome, you are required to critically evaluate an organization's environment within the context in which it operates. So it's divided into two sections. The first one is about the external environment, and the second part is about the strategic capability and competence. So this part of the syllabus provides you with a framework for understanding the strategic management by examining both the external environment and the internal organization capabilities. So there are various tools that you could use, the forecasting tools. So the context integrates environmental scanning, strategic capability assessment, and resource management to support informed decision-making and sustainable growth. So again, we look at firstly, give you an overview of the external environment first, and then the second part, which is on the strategic capability. Now, this section explore how the companies analyze the external environment, such as technological shifts, social cultural trend, legal regulations, environmental concerns, etc., etc. So maybe we can look into more detail into the syllabus, and we can explain a bit more on this part. Now, in today's dynamic business landscape, a company must continuously assess their external environment in order to maintain competitive and resilient. The external environment encompasses all the factors outside organizations that influences operations. So that is the PESTO elements. So these elements shape the market conditions, consumer behaviors, regulatory frameworks, and technological advancements. So all of which can either present opportunities or pose threats to the company. So when you are asked to critically evaluate the company's environment, you need to scan the environment and analyze these external factors and understand potential impact of these factors on the company. So apart from PESTOs, you also have the 4-5 forces. So these are very commonly used tools to assess the industrial attractiveness, competitive intensity, and the macro trends. Now, the evaluations help the company to anticipate changes, whether they need to adapt themselves, and how they will align their operations with the external realities. Firstly, we'll look at analyzing the operational environment. The first part in here is supply chain thinking. So what it means is that organizations use supply chain thinking to view their operations as a broader network of interconnected activities. So when you think about supply chain thinking, we have to think from sourcing raw materials and then up to delivering your final product. So if you use this mindset, this will help you to improve efficiency, reduce waste, and enhance your responsiveness to the customer's needs. So it enables better collaboration with the suppliers and partners. You can foster innovations and resilience across um, the supply chain. So the strategic directions is shaped by the external environment, technology, and human factors. So external environment include the market trends, competitions, regulatory pressures, which determines the opportunity and threats. So the technology in here would drive the innovations basically, and enables, for example, automations, open up new business models. And this is a sort of strategic directions, right? Then you can think of the human factors, such as the leadership, employee capabilities, organization culture, which could influence the adaptability and executions of your strategies. So it is important for the organizations to define the boundaries between different layers of the environment. And they could then focus their strategic analysis and could allocate the resource effectively. So internal environments includes elements under the company's direct control, such as staff, infrastructure, and internal processes. Near microenvironment consists of external environments that may interact closely with the company, like customers, uh, suppliers, competitors, and regulators. And the far macro environment encompasses the broader forces, the economic forces, social forces, and various forces that shape the long-term trend and the strategic risk. So you need to clearly define the boundaries to help the companies to distinguish what they can influence directly and what they can respond to technically, tactically, and what they need to monitor strategically. Then we need to analyze the far macro environment, so which is very complex, unpredictable. So it wants the company to stay agile and forward thinking. So you cannot be too stable. You have to be agile. So factors like geographical shift, global pandemics, technological breakthroughs, these all can dramatically change the business landscape. So you have to understand the uncertainty that that the company has to face. Macro trend basically refers to the large-scale, long-term forces like climate changes, urbanizations, digital transformations. That these are all mega trends that can reshape the industries and the societies. So these trends often unfold over decades and require strategic foresight and investment. Now, changeability and predictability is also very crucial. So changeability basically refers to how frequently and how rapidly conditions in the environment shift. For example, social media trends can change very quickly, and is highly changeable. Now, when you say predictability, it refers to how reliable these changes can be anticipated. For example, you predict that there's a demographic aging. It is slow, but it is highly predictable. But something is more difficult to predict is something like our AI. The technological disruptions can be very fast and unpredictable. Now, when we do the external analysis, most probably pesto will be the tools that you could use. Political factors, I think you know all these things very well, so I just go through it very quickly. So political factors include government stability, trade policies, taxations, regulatory frameworks. So these influence the market access, compliance cost, and strategic partnerships. Economic factors will be something like inflation, interest rate, exchange rate, unemployment rate, etc., etc. So that would affect the operations of the company. Social cultural factors can reflect this social values, lifestyle preferences, educational levels, and cultural norms. So they will shape the consumer's expectations and influence spending and product design. Demographic factors will include age distributions, gender distributions, population growth, wealth inequality, impact on labor markets, etc., etc. When we say wealth distribution, it refers to wealth inequality. Technological factors will involve innovations uh, driven by technological push from R&D or uh, market pull, which is from the customer demand. So challenges like skill divergence, where the workforce capability lag behind the technological needs, and diffusions of new technology across the uh, industries. Ecological and environmental factors include sustainability concerns, global warming, and public conscience about ecological responsibility. So these drive demand for green products and ethical um, business practices. So whenever you think you see something in the question that talk about green sustainability, then invariably you may need to consider the ethical practices. Now, finally, is the legal factors, and it compasses laws on labor, environmental protections, consumer rights, taxation, and all the other things. So they shape the operational boundaries, compliance obligations, and the strategic choices. Now, forecasting and scenario planning is also related, highly related. So there are four main forecasting methods. Single point forecasting, that is, you predict one specific outcome based on the personal current trend or based on historical data. So it's quite straightforward, but you assume the stability and there's a minimum disruptions. Well, for example, during the summer season, maybe the hotel can forecast 80 to 90% of occupancy rate based on last year's booking. and the current travel trends, so they can make such a predictions. Or the company, oil company can predict uh, oil prices will be average at certain amount per barrel in the next quarter. That's based on the geopolitical environment and the supply-demand models. So the point about this single point forecasting is that it cannot account for volatilities and uncertainties. So it is useful for short-term planning, but it could be risky for long-term planning. Range forecasting means you provide a spectrum of possible outcomes, helping the companies to prepare for variability and uncertainty. So, for example, a logistic firm estimate the fuel cost would range from, say, $3.5 to $4.2 per gallon over 6 months. So it depends on the uh, global chain disruptions. So you're not given a single number, but you're given a range. So this gives some flexibilities, resources flexibilities, and encourage contingency planning. The third one is alternative future forecasting. So it explores multiple distinct scenarios. Usually they are known as optimistic. No, it's not mentioned here. Optimistic futures, pessimistic futures, and disruptive futures. So, say optimistic futures assume favorable conditions. So there is growth, there's innovations, and some positive societal effect. So this future forecasting involve imagining distinct possible futures that guide us long-term strategies. So maybe in an optimistic future, a renewable energy firm can see rapid adoptions of the solar technologies, generous government subsidies, and declining production cost. So they can foresee something which is positive. Pessimistic futures will assume negative developments, economic downturns, regulatory constraints, or resistance from the society. And then we have this disruptive futures. Disruptive futures refers to radical changes, something unexpected event or paradigm shift that leads to the current or that ends up the current model. So that's the sort of different future forecasting. So they are not predictions; they are just strategic lenses that help the different forces to shape the landscape. Oh, that should be one in here. This should be also be scenario planning. Where is it? Oh, yes, scenario planning. So scenario planning goes beyond forecasting and constructing detailed narratives around possible futures. It helps the organizations to challenge assumptions, test the strategic options, and build flexibility into the decision-making models. Now, the uh, scenario planning they force the teams to question the business as usual thinking, and they force the company to think about some blind spots. So they test these strategic options, allows the leaders to simulate how different strategic performs under various conditions. So they encourage adaptive planning and resilience by preparing for the different multiple futures. So that's a forecasting and future planning. So next we will look at the and how to analyze the near or micro environment. So first is the economic dynamics. So this describes the nature of competitions and the market structures. So probably you know what's meant by monopolistic, that there are many sellers offering differentiated products. Branding also play a very key role in the monopolistic competitions. Oligopolistic means the few dominant firms controlling the market, and the barrier of entry is very high. Hyper competitive industry refers to very rapid innovations and aggressive competitions. Firms constantly disrupt rivals. And perfectly competitive environment means many sellers offers identical products, and the price is the main differentiators. I mean, when you're given a question and it's about the different industrial type, then you could consider discussing the industrial type and the market structures. So, I mean, when you analyze the business, the economic dynamics, you have to consider when you set your strategies. Again, business life cycle stages, you have to consider where you are now, what is the life cycle, where in the life cycle is your product. Introductions means there's a high cost, low sales market. You need to educate the market. Growth stage means that your business is in rapidly sales increase. Brand, you have to build up your brand and scaling operations. Maturity refers to the stage when your market becomes saturated. There are intense competitions and efficiency focus. And finally, decline means the falling of the sales, product obsolescence, and probably we need to exit. And then we have this Porter 5 forces. Probably you know this quite well. So look at the existing competitors. Look at the power, whether the supplier power is high or low, because they could affect your input cost and your supply chain flexibility. Look at the bargaining power of the customers. If it is high, they will affect your pricing. You cannot set a price too high. It will affect your product features and service expectations. Potential new entrants, that means whether they are threats to your market shares, and whether you have a low barrier of entries or high barrier of entries. Substitute products, this can erode demand, innovations, and differentiations, and help to defend against these substitute products. Market segmentations basically refers to the demographies, geographical segmentations, psychographic segmentation based on the lifestyles, the values, or behavioral segmentations based on brand loyalty or your uh, usage rates. So segmentation helps to tailor the products, and then you can give pricing according to the different customer needs. Behavioral forces organizations must consider will include human influences, technology, media influences, and game theory influences. Human influences refers to the emotions, social norms, or herd behavior. Technology refers to the drives of innovations, disrupt industries, changes in the customer's expectations. Media influence uh, will shape the brand perceptions, customer trend, public sentiment, that sort of things. And game theory influence refers to the strategic decision making based on the anticipating competitors' move, pricing wars, product launches, etc. So these are the various factors, the external environment factors that affects the that you need to consider before when you develop your strategies. So next we look at the strategic capability and competence. We looked at this. Sorry, just wait for a moment. So what is strategic capability? So this refers to the organization's ability to deploy resources and competence effectively in order to achieve the long-term goal and maintains its competitive edge in its industry. So it's not just about having the asset, but it's about using the assets wisely and strategically. So there are various sources of this strategic capability. We have the resources, which are physical resources, which are the tangible assets, buildings, machineries. Financial resources refers to your capital, human resources, employees, intellectual resources, maybe something like patents, brand reputations, organizations, culture, etc., etc. That could differentiate your firm from the competitors. Now, when we talk about capabilities, it refers to the organizational capability, which refers to the system, process, and structures that enables the companies to coordinate activities and adapt to changes. When we say about integrative thinking, it involves the sensitivities and skills to synthesize the diverse perspectives and solve the complex problem creatively and effectively. Core competence is very important. They are the unique strength or expertise that give the company the competitive advantage. So they're deeply embedded in the companies and it's difficult for the competitors to replicate. Now, when you discuss, you have to make use of some of these words, some of these terms in your discussions, like core competency, competitive advantage, this sort of things, right? So cost advantage means you produce good at the lowest cost, lower than your competitors. Differentiation advantage refers to the when the company offers unique products that can differentiate from the rest of the competitors. Maybe the customer perceive your products are being superior, and therefore that could justify the premium pricing. I mean, in the section A, we have seen this example of differentiations where the Scottish chocolate differentiate themselves by being more ethical, uh, uh, more sustainable sort of product. Understanding and achieving competitive advantage. Well, that would maintain your competitive edge requires more than just an initial success. It requires your strategic alignment and adaptability. So your organization structure, your conduct and performance must be aligned to support your strategic goal, and the flexible structures and ethical conduct can also enhance your performance and responsiveness. Horizontal integrations, vertical integrations. Horizontal means acquiring, merging with competitors to increase the market shares. Vertical basically means you merge with either upstream with the supplier or downstream with the distributors. This would increase your efficiency and your control. real analysis or the REAN analysis, the real analysis, which is the value, reality, immutability, or sustainable, non-substitutability. That you cannot substitute. Right. So these are the real analysis. The next will be the assessing your strategic capability. Again, we say that we could analyze the supply chain. It is crucial to understand how the value flows across the supplier productions and distributions. So it will help to identify the bottlenecks, reduce the cost, and improve the responsiveness. Then value chain analysis. Um, uh, break down the activity into the primary, the inbound logistics, so operation and marketing, and support, which are the HR, the IT, and the procurement. Right. So I mean, you should learn these models very well because this is very useful in your analysis. Benchmarking, compare the performance against the industrial benchmark or various other benchmarks. Gap analysis, you have to identify where your current capability falls short of the strategic needs. And then you have the SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. The McKinsey 7S, which are the strategy, structure, system, skills, style, staff, and shared value. So you have to learn all these hard and soft elements of the 7S. I mean, the hard elements are the strategy, structure, and system, whereas the soft elements will include skills, style, leadership approach, staff, talent, and culture, and the shared value. So benefits and limitations of different methods to assess strategies. Well, the good thing is that they provide structure and clarity to help the organizations to make decisions. Now, the limitation will be that they may oversimplify very complex realities, rely on subjective judgment, or fall to capture the fast changing external conditions. So, for example, the SWOT analysis may miss the emerging threats, and the benchmark may not account for some constraints. So there are some limitations on the above methods. Managing strategic capability refers to uh, uh, continuously developing your strength and adaptabilities through learning, through innovations and resources alignment. So a learning organizations will foster continuous improvement, knowledge sharing, and adaptability. So I mean, the common example would be the Google, which encourage experimentations and learning through this 20% time policy. People as resources, right? I think that's quite obvious. We have used the skills and knowledge matrix to identify the gaps and align the talents with the strategic goals. We have to recognize individualities. We have to tailor roles and development path for personal strength. We have to provide targeted trainings and development, that sort of things. One is the resources. Again, it is important to have financial resources, and they must be managed strategically to support growth, innovations, and resilience. So basically, these are the main topics in section B. As you can see, section B is about assessing the external environment and the internal capability. So when we talk about the external environment, we say that the evaluation of the external environment helps the companies to anticipate changes and to adapt strategies, which aligns with the external realities. Now, when we look at the strategic capability, we are referring to the company's ability to deploy resources effectively so as to achieve long-term objectives. So it includes things like tangible assets, intangible assets. So your competence are the skills and your ability that enables your companies to perform activities efficiently, and that you can differentiate yourself from the competitors. So together, the strategic capability and core competence will form the foundations of the competitive advantage. So a company must ensure that the internal strength will align with the external opportunities and mitigate the threats. So this alignment is often achieved through strategic fit, in which you match the company's capability with the environmental demand. So in short, these sections is essential for you to make decision making in relations to the development of strategies. So a company must continuously monitor the external trends and cultivate the distinctive competency so that the company can innovate and adapt and thrive in the uncertain market. Right, in the next set of slides, we look at one of the sample questions on section B. That is the question 5 of the 2023 paper. So again, I just give you 1 minute to look at the questions. You identify the relevant part of the syllabus, underline the action verbs, and then you draft the outline answers. So just give you 1 minute to look at these questions. Okay, I think that's a quite simple question, quite short, unlike the pre-release case studies. So this is a short questions, question 5. So you can see that you have been asked by the CEO to draft a paper, so you need to draft a paper, and then how to develop the strategies by applying the different tools and techniques. So they're suggesting that you need to develop how to develop the strategy. You have to explain how to develop the new strategies. You apply the tools and techniques. So this is a full 25 marks questions. You're expected to discuss the various aspects involved in the development of the strategies. Remember, the question asks you how, and then you have to explain how to develop. But before we look at this one, just like any of the cases, we need to find out the current position first. So when we find the current positions, we have to do the pastel analysis. They asked you to apply the appropriate strategic tools. So pastel and SWOT, they can look at this to analysis, and then you look at what are the factors relating to the competitive environment, what is the new strategies, and how to develop a new strategy. So there should be quite a number of things in here. So maybe just read through the case again, and I have identified several of these pastel factors. Probably you can identify something like that, you know. So this is a mortgage broker. They're facing the challenges or the threat of increasing market rate, and the market is a residential buy-to-let lending market. So it's about the competitive environment, which is very keen, increasing interest rate, economic factors, and it's looking to develop strategies to maintain profitability. So they're looking to develop the strategy. So this is your new strategies, which is to develop these new strategies to retain its client and sustain business growth. So they want to have sustained business growth. Now the major clients include young professionals and those investors seeking to provide the buy-to-let housing aimed at students. So this is a social factor. Again, it is about the increased interest rate, economic factors. So you are recruited and you have to revamp the strategies to meet the changing market conditions. So you have to ask yourself, what are the changing conditions, increase market interest rate. And they also give you some strategic issues, objective, which is to maintain profitability, which probably is the economic thing. Retain the existing client and attract new ones, social factor. Expanding market shares to sustain growth. Long-term strategy to maintain future interest fluctuations. Adaptations to the technological environment advancement, and have impact on the residential emissions level and the environmental regulations. So this gives you some idea of the different factors, and probably you have identified these factors quite easily. So you rearrange some of the factors that will give you an idea of the PESTEL analysis. So you can see in here the political factor, which is mainly the rise in the interest rate and housing policy reform and the government incentive that may influence the mortgage lending and client behavior. And then economic factors will be the sort of increased interest rate, and it's a various paths that there's an increase in interest rate. The mortgage brokers operate in a competitive environment, and the reduced demand in the core mortgage market. So that's a change. You know that the existing market is maybe saturated, and there's a reduced demand for the core market, so they have to change, think of new strategies. Buy-to-let housing to the students, obviously this is a social factor. Impact on residential emissions levels, something related to environment. So I mean, if you group all these things together, then probably you will have the answers for the PESTEL analysis. So it's quite easy. So what you need to do is to read the paper, read the question very carefully, and identify the various factors. Now we look at the marking scheme, and here they are. So this is more or less the same as what we have identified earlier, but with some twist in here. Some of the points they have is not very clearly mentioned in the case in the problem questions. So the difficult thing is that you need to really to deduce from the fact. And in here, the answer is quite open. For example, it says that adoption of online banking. So you may not come up with these answers because nowhere in here in the questions it mentioned about online banking. So what we need to do is to deduce some of the facts. So that is the most difficult part, because by deduction, you will demonstrate to the examiner that you really have understood the questions. Now, the major clients, what can you deduce from this? That they are young professionals, and the investors seek to provide buy-to-let housing aimed at students, and the company has to revisit and revamp its strategies to meet the changing environment. Now, when we look at the economic factors, we only say that that we, there's a student focus of the buy-to-let housing and the young professionals. So these are the new clients. So it suggests to you that these are the new clients, uh, the young professionals. These are the new clients. But if you look at the answer, it's somewhere mentioned is the impact of student debts. Now, obviously, if you read the whole thing, the interest of the impact of student debt was not mentioned. They just mentioned that they're young professionals and they buy those student-focused buy-to-let flats. So the young professionals will be your investors. But the interesting point is that it's not mentioned anywhere in your question that there's a debt, student debt, that they have to repay the student debt. So probably you have to deduce this to show your understanding of the environment, the economic environment. Because they target the ballot, the company targets the young professionals, and they want to buy this buy-to-let flats. So it's reasonable to infer that because they're too young, I don't know how young they are, that they may be affected by the student debt. So if you have to pay your debt, then you do not have enough money to buy those buy-to-let flats. So it's just a deduction. So it's maybe reasonable to deduce that as a young professional, they have not yet paid the government loans, government debts. And because of this, that will also affect their borrowing capability. That will affect the affordability of the debt. So the consequence for young house buyers of increased repayment and the difficulty they have in joining the housing ladder and saving money for deposit. So these are something you can see they're not really in the fact, but you need to deduce it from it. That is difficult to show that you really understand the thing. Next will be a discussion on online banking. Again, there's no mentioning that there's online banking in the answers. So how can they do this? How can the answer deduce that there's online banking? So it's not mentioned very clearly the technological advancement, but it's mentioned that the company is interested in innovations and strategy revamp. So basically, you can only imply this by thinking about digital tools to reduce the transaction cost. So in this case, you can only think of the online banking. So online banking is not specifically mentioned in the case, but you can only deduce it because the company wants to revamp the strategy, because the company wants innovations That would suggest you that there's some potential use of digital tools, and the online banking is a common channel for mortgage applications, servicing, and especially for the younger generations, who likes to use online things. So it is legitimate to assume that uh, the they have to adopt to this online banking uh, situations. Now you can see that even in the marking scheme, it's not 100% uh, coming from the question itself. Sometimes you need to deduce some of the facts, but don't worry, it's an open-ended, little bit open-ended. So long as you can give reasonable explanations, that would be quite good, you know. Now, after that, we finish this. I'll look at the SWOT analysis. Again, we underline some of the facts relating to the SWOT analysis. But if you look at the marking scheme, it didn't say a lot about SWOT analysis. They have not provided any answers to the SWOT analysis. Maybe you can do a SWOT analysis yourself. And from the fact of the case, again, just like the passive analysis, you underline the sentences that is related to uh, SWOT analysis strengths and weaknesses. So probably you can see in here that increased interest rate is a threat. I think it's a T rather than a W. And then there's a strength that they can have a group of clients. They want to maintain the clients, so they have a basic group of clients. Maybe strength is about the young investors. That's the opportunity itself as strength. Interest rate repeated again, so that's a threat, weakness, threat. And then you have to do a number of things with the increased interest rate. And strength, there's some strength in here. Retaining existing client, attract new one. Developing long-term strategies to mitigate the future interest rate fluctuations. Impact on residential emissions there. So probably you can do a SWOT analysis. You can mention that the strength of ballot is on the strong. Strategic focus on its profitability. They have a good client base, so that is strong, and they can retain the client. And they are thinking of expansions in the market, new strategies. So they have an established client base already, and they want to expand it to the younger professional, which provide them with a niche market advantage. The weakness is that the company may be vulnerable to increased interest rate that would affect the mortgage market. That's a threat as well. So these economic pressures affect the ability to maintain the demand in its primary learning factors. They can revamp the strategies to better address the changing market conditions. So that's the new opportunities. And they have the potentials to develop the innovative mortgage products So that's a new opportunity. And they have to expand environmental conscious to attract the sustainability focused clients. So again, this is opportunity. Threats that the balance operates in a competitive environment, the increasing interest rate. So all these are threats. So you can have a quick discussions of this what factors. And then finally we can discuss the competitive factors. So it's mentioned somewhere that the rivalry, and this is the buyer, right? I mean, you read the case carefully, then you can see them. So you can see that the marking scheme, they mentions the competitive trends, but they didn't do the pastel analysis. Again, if you want to discuss it along the pastel forces, then the Porter forces, that would be equally good. So maybe you can conduct the five forces. In this case, new entrants. That means you need to have capital investment. Maybe it's easier now because people are using digital platform and fintech innovations. That may be a threat as well as possibilities that the newcomers can join the market easily now. Bargaining power of the buyers, the bargaining power is high. They can compare the mortgage products and switch the providers because of the increasing online informations. So people can look at the informations and choose the product easily. Suppliers like the financial institutions will provide capital. So the bargaining power of supply is not clearly mentioned, so we just say that it is moderate. And then threats of new products, substitute products. Well, I think apart nowadays we have this sort of a peer-to-peer lending platform, but of course not too popular in Hong Kong. But whether there will be such thing in the future, we don't know. Peer-to-peer lending platform. So instead of asking the traditional bank to lend you money, you can have this platform to lend you money. Competitive rivalry is intense with the mortgage brokers and service providers for the market shares. So in summary, you can say that for the competitive environment, the ballot faces moderate barriers to entries for the competitors, but the clients hold a very strong bargaining power. Financial institutions exert moderate influence over ballots through the interest rate and policy and the lending terms. And substitute products such as fintech and peer-to-peer, they may be important and may be attractive to clients. And finally, it's about the competitive market that they need to have continuous innovation, that sort of thing. Next, you can talk about the five P's. So, I mean, they come up in various parts. This is just a suggestion to you. Positions, plan, pattern, perspective, these sort of things. So you can more or less guess what are these five P's are, the Mintzberg's five P's. Well, say plan refers to the how to develop. That means you can discuss using Mintzberg's five P's. The plan, which is the strategy, is a plan as a deliberate course of actions. Right? So for Ballard, the aim is to maintain profitability and minimize the impact of reduced demand. So this is a clear example of strategic planning. So they are setting objective and designing steps to navigate the rising interest rate. Ploy in here is a specific maneuver of the competitors. They want to outwit them and counteract the competitors. So it's a tactical and very often short-term ploy used to gain the advantage in the competitive environment. So for Ballard, I think developing a strategy to respond to increased interest rate and competitive pressure could be a ploy. So it's calculated to move the market positions and avoid losing clients to the rivals. And then we have this pattern. So the pattern for Ballard is the ongoing efforts to retain clients and attract new ones. So in respect, this is a pattern. And this shows a consistent commitment to the customer engagement. And then positions for Ballard refers to the focus on the buy-to-let housing for the younger generations. Perspective is the overarching policy or the philosophy. So the interest in the long-term strategies and the environmental impact reflect a broader perspective. So they're thinking beyond the immediate profits once the sustainability and growth. Right. So I think this is very simple and short questions. So you can look at the question again. It requires you to how to discuss quite a number of issues. All right. When you draft a paper to explain how to develop a new strategy, so you have to consider from the start, and then you have to analyze some of the things, right? Like the SWOT analysis, asset analysis. Apply the five P's, apply the poor five forces, etc. So you have to conclude with the need for ongoing monitoring, flexibilities, and adaptability to sustain the mortgage-focused competitiveness in this revolving market. I think that's it for this section P, which is quite simple and straightforward. Um, it's it's easy to identify the external factors. It's not that difficult. Uh, I think most candidates also would like to answer these some questions. Okay, so we stop in here, and then in the next section we'll look at the section C. Right? Thank you. move on to section C. So like before, I would firstly introduce section C to you first, and then we will move on to look at some examples. Now you note that section C there is quite a lot of things in section C. So it's 30% of your reading time and learning time. You can see that there are four main sections in here, which are the strategy and organization culture, the governing body and strategy, um, the organizational purpose, and business ethic and social responsibility. So, as you can guess, as this is one of the longest topic in here, there must be a question on section C. Now, the sections provides a comprehensive explorations of the key topics relating to strategies, the organization culture, the governance purposes, and ethics. So it is structured into these four main sections. So let's take a look at these four sections individually. The first one is organization and culture. So under this, we have 5 headings: the importance of culture, understanding culture, importance of culture, creating, sustaining, changing culture, and organizing culture and national culture. So what you need to do in here is that make sure that you understand how to apply culture as a strategy, because these sections look at the interplay between strategies and organization culture. So we have to understand the cultural influences on the strategy making. So that is most important. So when we look at the cultural influences, we have to look at the historical factors, the historical cultural drivers, and the meaning of organization culture, and the impact of those strategic drifts. We look at some of the models in relations to this culture. So let's take a look in more detail about the organization culture in here. So as you can see in here, the first topic in here is the importance of the organization culture. I mean, as you can see in here, the first one is the importance of culture and history and the influence on the current and future strategies. So, I mean, we look at the historical driver, and this examines the historical factors that shape the company's culture. For example, a founder member will have tremendous influence on shaping the culture of a company. And then next will be the meaning of the organization culture. Well, it defines the cultural organization culture, what's meant by shared value, what's meant by belief and practices, that sort of things, And the reasons for impact of the of culture and strategic drift. Now, this will discuss the strategic drift, including incremental changes and flux, and the potential outcomes such as transformation or organizational decline. So what is the strategic drift? Well, strategic drift is a gradual misalignment of the company's strategy and its external environment. So it often happens when a company continues doing what worked in the past. For example, even if the market conditions, technology, or customers' expectations has been changed, but they continue to use the old strategy. So that's a misalignment of the strategy. Cultural role. The organization culture can either be strategic adaptations or block it. So a rigid culture may resist change. So you have, whenever there's a change is imminent, then you have to see if the culture resists the change. Because of this resistance, that would cause a drift in here. So you can use some of these terms in your discussions, whether you can find out that there's any cultural or strategic drift in here. A flexible culture can embrace change and prevent drift. So we have to see if the culture is a little bit more rigid. So you can see that uh, there are some terms that you may need to understand. So when maybe we can say that there's an incremental strategic changes, which means that there are small gradual changes that can keep in pace with the external shifts, or there are strategic drift, as I've explained earlier, and the result would be that your strategy will be eventually be outdated, and that may reflect whereas the period of confusion and instability when the old strategy failed, but the new strategy is not very clear. Transformation of death is the final outcome. So either the company can reinvent itself by transformation or it declines. So these are some of the concepts or terms that you can use in your discussions of the cases. Then they're quite useful in your analysis. Then we look at understanding culture. In here, it means that the culture frame of references. Now, culture frame of reference explores the various cultural perspectives. It can be the national, regional, or organizational culture, as well as the subcultures. And you look at the impact of those on the organizational behavior. And sometimes you may need to analyze the culture and the various models of the culture. Obviously, you have to be familiarized with the different models because the different models introduce several more introduce this is for understanding of the organization culture, and you have to understand these things, learn this by heart, so that you can apply to the scenario. Now, let's have a very brief and quick review of what these different culture types are. For example, Harrison's and Handy's cultural types will include power culture, role culture, task culture, and person cultures. Right? And the power culture is characterized by centralized decision making, where the authority is concentrated in the hands of a few people. Well, for example, in the early days, Apple, Steve Jobs had an immense influence over the product decisions and the company's direction. So they have this sort of power culture within the organization. So when you're given a case, you have to analyze what type of culture it is by using Handy's culture types classifications. Role culture emphasizes on the clear defined roles, rules, and procedures. For example, they are often found in the bureaucratic organizations. For example, in the civil service, there's a hierarchy and formal job descriptions. Next will be the task culture, which focuses on the teamwork and problem solving. And the power will be distributed based on the expertise, right? Um, and then finally is the person culture, in which the individual is at the center, with organizations existing to serve its members. So this is commonly found in professional partnerships, such as law firms or medical practices, where autonomy and personal development are more prioritized. I mean, the most common type of culture seen in the case studies would be power culture. Sometimes they ask things about task culture as well. Now, next we'll have Deal and Kennedy's four types of organization culture. Tough guy, macho type culture thrives in a high-risk environment uh, with very rapid feedback, encourage bold decisions and competitiveness. Well, the investment banks like Goldman Sachs will exemplify this with very aggressive, performance-driven efforts. The second type of the Bill and Kennedy uh, type of culture is work hard, play hard culture. So it is energetic and customer focused with low risk and fast feedback. Um, for example, some airlines will foster this culture through team spirit, customer service, and employee engagement. Now, the third type is called bet your company culture, which involves high risk and slow feedback, where the decisions have long-term consequences. Well, for example, the aerospace firms like Boeing will operate like under this culture, where there's high risk and the feedback is slow. And the last type is called process culture. It's low risk with slow feedback. It emphasizes on consistency, rules, and procedures. So it's a process type of culture. So, for example, companies like insurance company, they often exhibit this type of culture where you have to adhere to the protocols, and that is very important. Now, the Johnson's cultural web is again very often. So, I mean, all these different models are very important, and they're very often asked. And you can use any one of them. You don't need to memorize. I mean, you don't need to apply all of them in your answer. But sometimes they will ask you to apply one or two of them. So Johnson is another popular one. As you can see in the marking scheme, they often mention Johnson. Johnson's cultural web defines 6 interrelated elements that shapes the organization culture. And these are stories, rituals, symbols, power structures, organization structures, and control system. So you need to memorize these specific terms and have to apply this to cases. So stories reflect the organization histories and heroes. So, for example, Microsoft employees recount Bill Gates' early innovations to reinforce the culture of technical excellence. Ritual and routines, these are daily behaviors that signals what is valued. For example, Google's weekly TGIF meetings will promote transparency and open communications. Now, another type is the symbols, which include logos, office design, and dress code. Uh, for example, Facebook has this casual dress culture and open office layout, and it symbolizes a very informal and collaborative culture. And then with this power structure, which determines who holds influence. For example, in Amazon, power is often held by data-driven leaders with power who prioritize the customers' metrics. Organization structures define the reporting lines and hierarchy of, for example, a flat culture like Spotify will support these agile teams and very rapid innovations. Control system involve performance measures and rewards. For example, the Salesforce used customer satisfaction scores and innovation metrics to guide the behavior. So, I mean, if you want to apply Johnson's cultural web, you have to apply these 6 interrelated elements to your scenario. Shin's 3 levels of culture, which are called artifacts. These are the visible aspect of the culture, such as the office layout, dress code, and slogan. As post values, they are the stated principles and goals of the organization. For example, Patagonia publicly commits to environmental sustainability, and this is reflected in its mission statement and marketing. And the last one is the basic assumptions. These are more deeply held beliefs that guide the behavior more unconsciously. So, for example, in Toyota, the assumptions that continuous improvement is essential will drive this lean manufacturing philosophy and the employees' training. So we have these different types of culture, different models of culture. And finally, we have Hart's culture and style. There are 4 of them, which are the control-oriented culture, which emphasize on the structure, discipline, and predictability. So, for example, this can be seen in traditional manufacturing firms like Ford. A performance-oriented culture will focus on the result, competitions, and achievement. So Nike will embody this with this emphasis on the ethical excellence and market leadership. Collegial culture values teamwork, participation, and shared decision making. And then we have the last one, which is creative culture. This encourages innovations, experimentation, and risk taking. So we have these different models in here. So for this type of, I mean, this part, understanding culture is quite important because you need to apply the models to the scenario. So this gives you a framework for you to analyze a culture. This enables you to diagnose an alignment with the strategies. Next will be the topic on the importance of culture. So this is really was a little bit more simpler. You have to see the role of the culture as an enabler or a barrier. So they guide the strategic planning and risk management. So the different terms in here. Dominant culture. They look at the way the dominant culture within an organizations and which shapes the influence on the strategic decisions. Strong and weak culture. So in strong cultures provides clear guidance and coherence. With weak culture will lead to ambiguity and misalignment. So, I mean, these are some of the terms that you can use in your discussions. The influence of culture on strategies. So this probably would look at the culture, how the culture shapes the strategic decisions and outcomes. So look at the positive impact or negative impact of the culture. Culture as a liability uh, and the potential consequences. It explores the scenario where the culture becomes a hindrance, leading to challenges such as resistance to change or ethical lapses. The positive influence of culture on strategy. So this will highlight the benefits of a strong, aligned culture in driving innovations, collaborations, and success. The cultural correlations, Financial Reporting Council guidelines on creating a healthy organization culture. So that recommends fostering a very positive culture that supports long-term success within the company. The next section will be on creating and sustaining changing culture. Uh, for this part, we look at how to build or shift the culture intentionally so as to support transformation and long-term success. So it says changing the culture. So again, you have to be aware of some scenario questions when they ask you about changes in the culture. Um, and sometimes this will be linked with section F, which is on change management. So we need to discuss something on change management as well as the change in the culture. Now, forces that create culture will probably will look at the key drivers of organization culture, like leadership, history, or external environment. So you can see the forces that create the culture in the case scenario. You should be able to identify it if, uh, if the question is on the culture. Methods of developing and sustaining culture. This outline the strategies for nurturing strong organization culture, which include communication, training, and reinforcements of the core value. And then challenges to the changing culture. Again, uh, you won't be asked directly what are the types of challenges. You will be given scenario and you have to identify what are the resistance or change the challenges to the cultural changes. So this actually is very important. You have to understand the difficulties in altering the organization culture. So you have to discuss things like beliefs, behavior, conformality, uh, and the nudge theory. So we can introduce a concept of nudge theory to facilitate the change. Maybe we look at a little bit more detail about these different terms. So beliefs are your deeply held assumptions and values that shape how the people will interpret their work and the organization purpose. So you have to look at what are the beliefs in the company, what are the beliefs of the leaders. Changing beliefs is difficult because they're often unconscious and emotionally rooted. Um, so uh, you have to look at the type of company. For example, if it's a traditional company, manufacturing company, maybe an employee will believe that quality comes from strict control and hierarchy. So that is the belief. They think that you must have strict control uh, and hierarchy. So if you want to change the culture into some agile methods or decentralization, this may conflict with the belief, and this will lead to resistance. Even if for example, if the new approach is more effective. So even if the method is more effective, you will face some resistance uh, by the staff. A behavior um, refers to the visible actions and habits of the individuals or group within the organizations. You change a behavior is very difficult. It's quite challenging because it requires uh, breaking of routines and often involves unlearning of some long-standing practices. For instance, in a company, for example, where meetings are always formal and hierarchical, uh, if you encourage open brainstorming or informal collaborations, they will feel very unnatural and very uncomfortable. Uh, Even there's a promotions by the leaders, but it's difficult to change this sort of behavior. Directions. So you have to spot at all these things, which comes up in the case scenario and discuss some of these terms. You have to apply these things, and they don't ask about what are the challenges very directly, or make sure that you can use some of these terms in your discussion. Um, Direction refers to the strategic visions and goals that guide the organizations. So shifting the directions can be difficult when the employees are emotionally invested in the old visions or is unclear about the new visions. So maybe if the company moves from some product centric to customer centric culture, then employees who have long focus on on these things will struggle to prioritize the uh, customer feedback or the service metrics. They feel that the new directions uh, will undermine their expertise. And conformity basically refers to the pressure to align with the group norms and expectations. So it can be a major barrier to cultural change because individuals may fear standing out or being judged for adopting new behaviors. So, for example, a law firm, they have this very traditional or conservative dress code, very formal communication style. If there's a younger employees who try to induce a casual Fridays or some collaborative tools, they may face very subtle pushback or exclusions. And finally is the nudge theory by Taylor and Sunstein. This theory suggests that you have to use small indirect interventions that will be useful in influencing the behavior without forcing the change, making it very useful tools for cultural transformations. The challenge lies in designing the nudges that are subtle and yet effective. Ensure that they can align with your cultural outcomes. For example, if a company wants to promote healthier habits, they may rearrange the cafeteria so that fruit is more visible than desserts. Right? So in a cultural context, you place uh, some feedback boxes in the meeting rooms, or highlight some collaborative success stories in a newsletter. We nudge the employees' trust, openness, and teamwork without mandating it. So these are some of the challenges to changing organizations. As I've said, again, these are quite important. You have to be able to apply and discuss these things. And then we have this organization culture and national culture. There's quite a lot of theories in here. There's the Hofstad's theory on the national culture, which focuses on things like power distance, uh, which examines the extent to which the hierarchical differences are accepted and expected within a culture. And then uncertainty avoidance. So it looks at how the culture handles ambiguity and risk, shaping the organization policies and practices. Individualism and collectivism, which looks at how the culture prioritizes individual achievement or group harmony or collaborations. Masculinity versus femininity explores the cultural values associated with competitiveness and assertiveness, uh, and against the care and quality of life. Confucian's dynamism discusses the influence of long-term orientations and perseverance in shaping the company's culture and behavior. And then we have this importance of understanding the culture inference and strategic making. So this emphasizes on the need to consider the cultural factors when they implement or develop strategy. So this is one of the things that you have to bear in mind in your discussions. Cultural convergence and variance examines the interplay between globalization and cultural diversity, highlighting the balance between standardizations and adaptations. I think we have discussed the Hofstad's theories. So these are basically the Hofstad's theories. And then we have this Trumpener's theory, which looks at the dimension of culture and organizations' behavior. So again, there's quite a number of things in here. Fons Trumpeneers identify 7 dimensions that explain how the cultural values can shape the organization practice and the interpersonal relationships. For example, they look at well, it's not, well, it's in your study guide. It looks at the things like universalism or particularism, which look at whether the rules apply equally to everybody or they are adapted to specific situations. Individualism and communitarianism. They look at just very similar to Hofstad's dimensions, focus on the group responsibility or individual responsibility. Neutral versus emotional describe how open emotions are expressed in a professional setting. So, for example, in Japan, they have a neutral culture will prevail. The emotions are controlled and subtle, and like Italy, where emotional expression are more accepted and even expected in the business interactions. And then we'll have this, the fourth dimension is specific and diffuse. We look at how people separate work and personal life. So, for example, in Germany, the relationship are very specific. Business life are very distinct from the private life. Whereas in China, they have the diffuse culture. Usually, it blends the personal and professional relationship. So you build up trust through this informal relationships. And then we have this achievement and ascriptions, which look at how status is earned through accomplishment or assigned by age or gender. Right? So achievement, for example, in the United States, achievement is the key and promotion is based on the performance. For inscriptions in places like Saudi Arabia, inscriptions play a very important role, where the status may be linked to the family and the social position. Sequential versus synchronic time examines how the culture perceives time. Is it linear or flexible? So places like Switzerland will value sequential time. Punctuality and schedule are very crucial. Whereas in places like Mexico, they embraces the synchronic time, when you have multitasking and fluid timelines are more acceptable. Now, finally, we have the dimension of internal and external control, which considers whether a person's belief they control the environment or adapt to it. So in Netherlands, for example, internal control is very common. People strive to shape outcomes, whereas in places like India, external control is more accepted, with greater emphasis on fate and adaptability. So we have these different aspects of the strategy changing. Sorry, this is a part on cultural and national dimensions in relation to the culture, because it looks at the regional value, especially if the company or if the case is on multinational company instead of a regional or local company, then you have to consider this national cultural elements, especially for the global strategy. And sometimes questions are asked about this cross-cultural leadership. So you have to be aware of this as well. So this is the first topic only. And then in the second topic, which is the governing body and strategy. So this is the next topic is on governing. So we'll look at all these. So as you can see, this is one of the largest topic in the syllabus. Now the next one is the governing body and strategies. So it looks at the crucial role played by leadership, by corporate governance structure, the importance of balancing risk, control, and accountability. So effective governance requires understanding of the stakeholders' expectations and alignment of your strategic decisions with ethical, legal, and societal standards. So risk management is central to governance, involving, say, things like identifications, evaluations, and mitigations of different risks, financial risk, operational risk, and reputational risk. So in this section, they look at the importance of governance in shaping the strategy of the company. I think for corporate governance, you know them quite well. We don't need to go through this in detail. I just flip through this very quickly. But unlike the earlier topic, which is on culture, I think it's more important in your discussions. The nature of corporate governance, what is corporate governance? Look at highlighting the importance of accountability and transparency. The governance of assets discusses the management and oversight of the organization assets, emphasizing on the importance of safeguarding resources and optimizing the use. Governance metrics. So under this topic, which introduce governance matrices, explain the interaction between governance and operations, and the significance of this principal agent model in understanding the governance relationship. So look at the interactions, firstly, between governance and operations, the significance of principal agent models in the governance relationship. So for those who have learned about or corporate governance, you should know this quite well already. So strategy should be the heart of governance. It emphasizes on the triangulations of strategy, risk, and control. It focuses on the integrations of governance practices. So the triangulations of strategy, risk, and control discuss the interconnectedness of the strategic planning, risk management, and control mechanism in the governance. And then the focus on the strategy, risk, and control in governance will highlight the importance of aligning the strategic objective with the risk tolerance and control measures. And then governance of future based on reality of today explores the forward-looking governance practices that address the current challenges and anticipate future trends. And then with this type of governance structures, shareholder value, stakeholder value, advantages and disadvantages of different governance structures, national differences, monolithic, dualistic or pluralistic governance structures. So it explores the variations in the governance practice at different countries and different organizations. Stakeholders' expectation mainly defines stakeholders. Who are they? The different types of stakeholders. So I just rushed through this one very quickly. I think that's not too difficult for most of you. You know who are stakeholders. You know what is stakeholder mapping. I think is introduced stakeholder mapping as a method for categorizing the stakeholders, categorizing them into internal, market, and external groups. So we have this stakeholder mapping. Internal, market, external discusses the classification of stakeholders based on the relationship with the organization. Primary and secondary expectation of stakeholder groups. Look at the various expectations of stakeholders, distinguishing between the primary need and the secondary needs. Sources and indicator of power examines the factors that determine stakeholders' influence, such as political priority and visibility. Political priority discusses the impact of political considerations on stakeholders' expectations and governance decisions. Difference between expectations of commercial, public, and third sector stakeholders. Purpose, importance, and benefits of effective stakeholder analysis. You have to align the governance practice with the strategic objective. Governance forces, law, best practice, etc. So, I mean, you know what is stakeholder mapping, but you have to relate this with the strategy. Next will be risk, reputations, and strategies. So what's meant by risk, uncertainty, and risk-taking dynamics? Of course, you will know more about the risk in the risk management subject, but in here just gives you a very quick revision of what risk management is about. So for those who have studied risk management, this part is quite simple to you. So what's meant by risk? What's meant by uncertainty? What's the implications of risk and uncertainty in the decision-making process? Risk management introduced key concepts in the risk management like a risk appetite, risk capacity, and risk tolerance. Right? So basically, for those who have not done risk management, risk appetite refers to the level of risk that the organization is willing to accept in pursuit of its objectives. For example, a fintech company, a fintech startup may have a very high risk appetite. They choose to invest into some untested technologies and enter volatile market in order to gain a competitive advantage. So in contrast, a government agency typically have a very low risk appetite. So they prioritize stability and public trust over innovations. Risk capacity basically refers to the ability of the company to absorb risk. So based on its resources, system, and resilience. So maybe a multinational corporation with a very strong financial reserve and diversified operations. So they have a high risk capacity. It can afford to take losses in one area while maintaining an overall stability. Now, for example, in contrast, a small non-profit may have very low risk capacity. Risk tolerance is the level of acceptable variations from the expected outcome within the company's risk appetite. So it's more specific and operational. So, for example, in a pharmaceutical company, risk tolerance will be very low when it comes to clinical trial and safety. So it will not accept any deviation from the strict safety protocols. So I mean these three concepts actually help the company to align the strategic directions with the stakeholders' expectations. Right? Maybe a tech firm, the shareholders in a tech firm may push for bold moves. That means they want to have high risk appetite. But regulators may impose strict compliance limits. So in other words, they have a very low risk tolerance. And the company's financial health may determine how far they can actually go. So it's about risk capability, capacity. Then we have this perspective of different types of organization risks. Look at the financial risk, operational risk, competition risk, environment risk, people risk. I think that's quite straightforward. And then we have this different tools for managing risk. The KPIs, the risk register. Risk register explores the role of documentation and tracking of the organizational risk. Risk matrix introduces is a tool for prioritizing and assessing risk. And balance scorecard again is sometimes being asked. It's about the use of balance scorecard in integrating strict risk management with the strategic objectives. And then we have the governance requirement for internal control. Again, it's about identifying risk, uh, evaluating the effectiveness of internal control and mitigation methods. And then we have this risk management, reputation management, which looks at the importance of building and maintaining the organization's reputation as one of the strategy. So it's about strategic building and maintenance of reputations, the risks of reputation management, the benefits of effective reputational management, which highlights the advantage of strong reputations in enhancing the organizational success. And finally, it's the development of the strategy with an awareness of the reputational impact. So that is for this section, which looks at the governing body. This is the second section on governing bodies. We have 4 sections. There's quite a long topics in here. So the governing body of strategy will focus on corporate governance. Look at the relationship between governance and strategy. We look at how stakeholders' expectation and risk management and reputation management will have a role in shaping your strategies. And then we come to the third big topic, which is called expressing organizational purpose. So this section actually looks at the concept of organization purpose, including the development of the strategic visions, missions, and objectives. It explores the challenges of defining and communicating purpose statement, and emphasize the alignment of purpose with strategic directions. So some of the framework, again, you need to consider in here. So this is the third big section, and you have to use some of the models in here. The first thing is the strategy and organization purpose. Is look at the historical perspective. The historical perspective basically explore how the concept of organization purpose and strategy has evolved over time. So very much like culture, it can also shape by the changes in social values, economic and technological changes. You understand the historical shift will also help the companies to learn from the past success and failure, and reviews how the external forces will influence the strategic priorities. Defining strategic aims involves translating the company's purpose into specific and measurable goals. Ensure that the purpose is not just aspirational, but it should be actionable. And also guide the resources allocations and performance management. And then you have this taking different time perspective into account. That means effective strategy consider the past, the lesson that we have learned, the present, that is your present capability and challenges, and the long-term visions, which is the future. So this is a time-based approach ensures continuity and adaptability. It also helps to align stakeholders across generations and say, for example, the long-term investors, employees, and customers will all benefit when the strategy respects the heritage of change. And then we're determining the values and parameters of the strategic um, directions. That means the organization value act as a guiding principle, which shape the strategic choices and behavior. Next, we look at the elements of strategic purposes, which includes the various elements. There's the recognitions of tactical plan. You have the strategic visions, reasons for developing the strategic vision. So we have to find out the benefits of having a clear, compelling visions, such as enhanced focus or motivations. Difficulties in developing and measuring communication and communicating strategic visions will focus on the challenges that the company face in creating and shaping the future and shaping the visions effectively. Reasons why vision statements can fail. We look at the pitfalls why the vision statements may fail. For example, then it may be due to lack of clarity, or there's a misalignment with the stakeholders' expectations. And then we'll have the strategic missions, the rationale for the missions, characteristics of the missions, clarity, belief, internal message, external message. I mean, that's quite straightforward. They also introduced the S-rich mission models to develop and evaluate the effectiveness of the mission statement. So this is a framework for assessing the mission statement quality. And then we have this McKinsey's 5S, 7S model to challenge the organizational purposes. I think we'll look at this before, the 7S. And then we have this strategic objective, looks at the importance of setting measurable and achievable objective, which drive the success of the organizations, aligning the strategic objective with the company's objectives, the importance of developing measurable objective, understanding the meaning of SMART. Sometime when you have to do for example, a balanced scorecard, maybe you need to have the SMART objective. Make sure that you're written in the SMART format, which means is specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, relevant, and timely. Make sure that in your objective, sometimes they do ask you to formulate the objective for the company. So when you do your objective, when you set your objective or create the objective for the company, make sure that it has these different elements in your objective. Integrated Council report really promote the integrated reporting and alignment of the objectives. Problem that can arise from within with objective would examine the common issues in objective settings, such as lack of clarity or unrealistic expectations. Strategic alternatives look at the building a robust challenge to stretching, making, and then redefine the company's technical plan. Then we have this statement of purpose, which align the different elements of organizational purpose. So, I mean, when you align the vision, missions, and strategic option or objective, it ensures that all parts of the organization are working together in a unified goal. So make sure that when you see some vision and mission statement in in the case, then you can discuss whether this will align with the strategic objective or not. So the alignment will avoid internal confusions or contradictions and strengthen the trust by the stakeholders. Ensuring clear communications to all stakeholders. So clear communication ensures everybody, your employees and your customers or the regulators understand what your organization stands for. So this relates to transparency, and transparency will help to build up credibility and accountability. So poor communications can lead to misalignment and skepticism. Principles to help to create effective statement purpose. So this is relevant. Ensures the purpose resonate with the current societal and market context. So alignment means that the purpose must reflect the organization's actual practices and the strategic directions. So this sort of purpose statement will provide clarity and directions. Lastly, will be the topic on business ethics and corporate social responsibility. And again, this is sometime will be asked about this. So, I mean, this topic is very fundamental to sustainable and credible strategic management. So make sure that the decision making is ethical. It shapes the organization integrity and reputations. So make sure that you align with the societal expectations and long-term viability. So there are some topics in here. For example, you have to understand what's the ethics. Explore how the ethical principles will guide the decision making and shaping the reputations. Business ethic in strategy development will look at the ethical considerations, right? Look at the global, social, and the individual levels. CSR will look at the CSR responsibility, social, economic, and legal, and ethical, and philanthropical responsibilities. And then we have this different stances of CSR, which are laissez-faire, enlightened self-interest, stakeholder interactions, and shaper of society. And then we have this social auditing and CSR. I mean, these are the different ethical elements that you may need to discuss in your strategy. So when there's a question that involves ethical element or the corporate responsibility elements, probably you need to discuss it in quite detail and look at the various elements and various dimensions. So, for example, you have these different dimensions of ethics. For example, the crystals and colors are different dimensions. uh, of ethical perspective. You may need to sometimes use some of these models in your discussions, right? Um, so I mean, there's no right or wrong things, but you have to identify the perspective that the organizations will be adopting when they are making strategic directions, decisions. So this gives you a lens for evaluating what is right or what is just, right? So, for example, in the precise dimensions, they talk about uh, utilitarianism and uh, uh, which focuses on the outcome and maximizing the overall benefits or reduce harm. Right-based ethics, justice-based ethics, common goods ethics, or virtual ethics. So the different classifications of these ethical elements here. So the ethical considerations will shape your strategic objective to influence what the company chooses to pursue and how it operates. So it defines the boundaries for acceptable risk and innovations. And also, stakeholder trust will also help to build the ethical strategies. um, I don't go through all these things in detail. Just select some of the things in the discussions. Well, another the Carroll's pyramid of CSR. They look at the different four levels of responsibility, as I've already mentioned. The economic responsibility form the foundations of the CSR. Is emphasize the need for the business to um, this one. So it's the economic. I mean, these are some of the framework that help you in your discussions, right? Um, so profitability can also enable the company to fulfill other CSR um, uh, obligations. So if the company is financially healthy, then they can afford to invest in the environmental initiatives and or the community programs. Legal responsibility requires the companies to comply with laws and regulations, and legal compliance is the minimum standard of responsible legal conduct. Ethical responsibility, for example, will go beyond the legal responsibility and focus on what is morally right. And ethical behavior will build on stakeholder confidence and long-term behavior, reputations. I mean, so these are the different areas that you can look at and discuss. Philanthropical responsibility involves the voluntary contributions to the society well-being, donations, volunteering, and community support, and different things like that. And the different stances you can discuss. Laissez-faire stance views CSR as unnecessary, focus solely on profit maximizations. So you look at the 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 view of your company, all right? Enlightened self-interest probably aligns the CSR with long-term business success, recognizing the ethical behavior benefits both the society and the company. Stakeholder interactions involve actively engaging stakeholders in the CSR decision-making process, and shaper of society sees the organization as a proactive force for social changes. And then we have this social auditing and CSR. It's about it's about evaluating how the company meets its CSR commitment, uh, offering transparency um, and accountability. So employees' welfare, the employees' welfare focus on the health, safety, fair wages, work-life balance. So you invest in the employees' welfare will improve the retention rate, productivity, and morale. So ethical job descriptions refers to the ensuring the roles are meaningful, safe, and respectful of human dignity. So you have a well-defined jobs that will enhance satisfaction and reduce burnout. Bribery and slavery. So SSR will include strong measures against bribery and modern slavery. So this action protects human rights and uphold ethical standards. And finally, social impact reporting and transparency as a transparent reporting on social impact and build trust and allow stakeholders to hold the company accountable. So next we'll look at sustainability as part of the strategy. I think just go through this very quickly. This point is the relationship with the CSR examines the connections between sustainability and CSR in shaping the organization's strategies. Long-term viability discusses the importance of sustainability in ensuring the organizational success and resilience. Impact on strategy development explores how sustainability considerations influence the strategic planning and the benefits of incorporating sustainability into organization strategy. So we looked at the advantages of incorporating sustainability in the business practice. I mean, by now, it's quite certain that sustainability is actually a part of strategy. When you consider the strategy, you have to consider the sustainability. And then social business and creating shared values. So it's different reasons for the rise of social business, social enterprise since the financial crisis. We have this green strategy, which focuses on environmentally focused strategies, and the types and purposes of social business with things like charity, social enterprise, social business, and not-for-profit companies and community interest companies, which we don't have this in Hong Kong. Not, I don't think there are any. Measuring the social values and triple bottom line, which is economic, social, and environmental considerations. And then we have these other measures of the Porter and Kramer, the concept of share value. Right? So creating share value through business practices to create a win-win situation. Hatherley look at the strategy, stakeholder, and business value. Discuss the insight in aligning the strategy with stakeholder expectations, etc. So again, in here there are two sort of concepts or model in here, which is the Porter and Kramer's concept of share value. So maybe you can discuss some of this concept when appropriate. So Porter and Kramer's concept of share value argues that the business can generate economic values in a way that also produce social values. Share value is created when companies address social changes, social challenges through the profitable business model. And this framework shift sets out from peripheral activities to core strategic functions. It also focuses innovations and competitive advantages. Whereas Hathaway emphasis is a bit different. Hathaway emphasized that strategy must be aligned with the stakeholders' expectation in order to create a sustainable business value. And he argues that the stakeholders' engagement is not just ethical, but actually it is strategical. So business value is enhanced when the company integrates the stakeholders' insight into the strategic decision making. So the Hathaway's view is to encourage the company to see stakeholders as a partner in the value creations. And finally, this section discusses the role of individuals and managers. So ethical issues faced by individuals and managers in organizations. So look at the challenges of the individuals, employees, and challenges when they navigate the ethical dilemma. Value-based approach to organization leadership, the Hempel's pyramid, and the potential conflicts of personal, business, and professional ethics, and the benefits of applying the principle value-based leadership to address ethical issues. So you can see it's quite a long syllabus. That's why it covers 30% of your learning time, and we can say probably there must be one question set on this section. You have to learn this by heart and make sure that you understand these things. So we have discussed all these things already. Now we'll take a look at a question on this part as an illustration. That is a question. We look at two questions first and see how this type of question being asked in here. So question 2 in here, they ask you about the culture. So there's a culture, the first part of the syllabus. There's a question on culture. So look at the importance of culture. So the culture of the company has changed due to the change in communication style, a tendency to dominate others in conservation. So when this comes in, when this is mentioned, then of course you have to immediately. I think you have to understand the importance of culture, the types of culture, etc. They give you a sufficient hint on the cultural aspect. There's a threat and unease many stakeholders, so you have to consider the stakeholder and sustainability, that sort of things. Deborah, who has been FFL for longer than Galvin, has observed a change with growing concern. She asked you to prepare paper to review the importance of smaller regional players like FFL have played in the company purpose. So that's also relates to the company's purpose, expressing the organization purpose, which is the third topic, advice on how to cultivate organization culture. Cultivating culture means developing the culture. So again, this question is really typically on the part 2, the governing body and strategy, and part 4, which is the business ethics and social responsibility. So I mean, this was the focus. So I think you can't miss the point that this is a question on section C. Now, question 6, for example, in here, asked you to explore the issues as being a factor that leads to data breaches that affect the culture. So we'll look at this example, how the data breaches have affected the company culture. So we look at some of the issues in here, but you can see that this is a question about the strategy and the organizational culture. You know? So in this question, you're asked to prepare a paper discussing the reestablishment of strong organizational culture. Right? So again, it's about culture, the differences in business culture between uh, uh, Lotus and Joshua, focusing on the leadership style. So probably, it's a leadership style. You're expressing the organization purpose, and providing recommendations. Stakeholder engagement. So again, we see a lot of discussion on stakeholder engagement and the role of stakeholder in shaping the sustainability and the strategies. So I think this is quite easy to identify that this is a question on section 3. So all the things that we mentioned may come up in your mind, and you have to have a checkpoint, a checklist, in seeing what you need to discuss. In some question, you need to discuss the type of culture, how how to develop a culture, how to change a culture, and sometimes you have to consider change management in your discussions. So, and then the other types of question that you can see is about it's not just a culture; it's about company's purpose, uh, the governing body, or the social responsibility. How you drive the cultural strategy development, how the strong organizations you have to discuss the importance of having a strong cultural organization culture within the company as a driver to the strategy. So you can see for this section, really it can ask you quite a different aspects of strategy, different aspects of culture, uh, CSR, and various other things. So um, it's quite a big topic, and sometimes you may miss some of the discussions. Um, Maybe let's take a very quick look at one question, which we've chosen. Is this question on 6A, which is the question on explore how the issues identified above as being a factor that led to the data breach have on the company. So I just give you 1 minute to think about, to read this question and think what are the approach, how to answer this type of culture. Maybe you have to identify what are the company culture in here, what undermines the company culture, and what's the relationship between the culture and the breach in this case. Again, it's important to look at the question very closely. You understand the facts of the questions, and sometimes they will give you some hints on how to answer the questions. So just give you 1 minute and come back when you are ready. right? So we can take a look at um, the facts again. So once I think you have read through the case already. Um, so this a company which is a consumer finance company and subsidiary of a large bank. They offer loans, uh, uh, financial solutions for individual purchasing consumer electronics and home appliances. So probably what is the culture in here? I think it reflects some uh, customer-based culture. There's a service-oriented culture built based on the uh, financial expertise and trust. So you have to identify the type of culture that is existing in this company. You know, the type of culture. And then thanks to the reputations, thanks to the financial expertise, it has attracted strong customer base. So this culture suggests uh, professionalism and credibility. So I mean that's also seen in when we discuss the culture. We also have mentioned the this point as well. Um, and then we look at the third part, which is a uh, something happened. They find out that there's a breach stem from negligent staff practice. So supposedly this is a very professional firm, and there is a breakdown of the accountability and compliance culture. So it gives you some idea that the company is not working, is no longer professional. But when we say professional, they usually don't make silly mistakes. Um, there's a lot of checking, ensure compliance. And it says the policy and procedures were not being complied with, multiple emails sent out with confidential links. So again, you can see start to have a culture that lacks of adherence to the internal norms and standardization. It's getting loose right now. And finally, it says something like compromised data include personally identified information, blah blah blah. So that's a really says that there's a little bit remaining strength in this company in the technical vigilance and operational monitoring in this company. So maybe what can you discuss in here? So once you understand the culture and what you need to discuss, and you have to understand culture, the importance of culture. You have described this in your in your answers because I think this is a 15 marks question, right? Or 25, yeah? 15 or 25 marks. Or 15 marks as a part A only. Right. So you can see the culture is getting weaker and weaker, and the employees are not being more and more negligent in that case. So why is that a change in this type of culture? Then we have to understand from the case what are factors that undermines this deteriorating culture. So when you look at the marketing scheme, they also say something like this in the introduction. Oh, the company culture is weakening and there's low employee engagement. They don't feel motivated and therefore they're really careless in their work. And this affects the team culture, this team spirit as well. So the weak culture, um, basically it means that these issues, I mean the some of the issues leads to the weakening of the culture. So if you look back in the question, it mentions some of the reasons for this is the cost-cutting measures, low interest rate, and there's quite a number of things that leads to the lowering or weakening of the culture. Next, in your marking scheme, they asked you to discuss the culture in terms of Johnson's concept of cultural web. Of course, you can use other models. It's up to you. But in Johnson's concept, this can be used to understand the culture of a company, right? Look at the drivers that has been badly affected by the staff cuts, interest rate, and other things. So actually, you have to identify the issues in the Johnson's elements and how this are affected by the issues. The issues are the 3 or 4 issues that were mentioned in here, not mentioned in the problem. So these are the main issues: cost cutting, staff cut, and the IT system for managing. So these are the issues, all right, that is faced by the company. So when we look at this question again, so my question to you is that can you find some of the Johnson's elements in the cultural wraps, that the elements? Then you have to discuss these things. So. Well, I think the first one is the ritual and routines. So I mean, they mentioned somewhere there's reduced training. So reduced training, so it affects the training and the learning routines. So there's a routine that they have regularly done some training. Right? Informal work around also weaken the compliance habits. So it's work around by weakening the compliance habits. And then rituals and routines. We have stories. Maybe stories about loss of experienced employees. Well, because of staff cut, maybe you cut the more experienced employees. That will erase the institutional memory and the success story of the company. Right? Or maybe you have the negative stories, negative narrative about staff being punished or their leadership failures. Symbols is a lack of training and staff cuts, and the lack of training symbolizes the undervaluing of the employees. Poor IT rollout may be a symbol of mismanagement and neglect. Power structure, staff felt empowered and disconnected from decision making. Trust in the leadership may be eroded. So these are all the things that you can discuss when you use the cultural web elements for the discussion. So these are the impact that we can see on the company. Control systems basically refers to compliance protocols are being ignored. They are poorly performed. So lack of training, again, this weakening control over secure data handling. So that's a control system. Organization structure, again, staff cut will disrupt the team cohesions and communications, and probably that will increase the workload. and that will blur the boundaries between roles and responsibility. So, I mean, these are the different rituals that you can see in here, right? So, for example, you can see that there's multiple emails are somewhere in here to talk about the multiple emails sent without confidential links. So there's a breakdown of the rituals. Uh, the security team's problem is a control system problem, and then the cost cutting pressure on the margin. That's the power structures. Maybe a loss of company culture of a staff cut. That's the organization structures that will have impact on stories and symbols and the control systems when they roll out new IT systems. So all these will weaken the existing culture of the company. So even in a small case like this, there are quite a lot of things that you can discuss in your answers. So you can identify the different uh, elements, um, the uh, the six cultural web elements even in this short paragraph. So so you can see that, and then you bring these things together, right? So staff cut, IT rollout, and training reductions. So these are the main problems. Now that you see that these are the issues, that the three issues in here, and the point in here is to ask you how these issues affect the culture. Now, how do they affect the culture? So the first issue, which is what would be the consequence to the culture? So cost cutting will have the pressure on the margins. So when you cut the cost, you reduce the compliance protocols, reduce the security protocols. Staff may feel undervalued. So these are the things you need to apply to the scenario, right? So what is the consequence of culture is something is not in the book or in anywhere, but you have to think about it and apply what will be the consequence of cost cutting on the culture. What is the question asks you about the issues on the culture, right? So you have to link this to the culture. So you don't discuss the financial aspect. We discuss the cultural aspect in here. So what's the cultural aspect? So if you cut the cost, then probably you have less training. People will have weakening in compliance and weakening the security issues, and then they have then probably you will override the long-term cultural values, less integrities, and you create a culture of corner cutting and risk tolerance. So it's about risk management, that sort of thing. So you can you can discuss various consequences. Again, it's not in anywhere in your notes or anywhere. Is that you have to show you understand the consequence uh, of these things on the culture. Staff cuts affect the morale, affect the shared values, affect a lot of things, affect the collaborations, affect the teamwork. Maybe the more experienced staff are lost. That will have effect on the cultural standard as well. And then people may be demoralized. So you discuss some of the effect on the culture of the company. The rollout of the new IT system was under investing in training. Again, this is about the employees' lack of confidence. So the culture of compliance is weakened. They may find ways to bypass the official protocol, to find shortcuts to do the things. So the risk management is getting loose. So once you understand the issues, what you doing in here is a discussions, right? Now this is your marking scheme. You see how they approach the answers, how to answer the question, and basically what they say is what are the issues, the issue 1, 2, and 3 that they mentioned, and what is a change in culture. They discuss a change in culture. So that's what I've said earlier. Training, lack of training, unprepared, affect the culture, they feel undervalued or overworked, leading to disengagement and decrease in motivations. So eventually, this change in the culture will lead to data breach, right? So, I mean, you can see from the answer how they structure the answer. They structure answer by looking at the issues and discuss the changes, which eventually leads to the data breaches. I mean, so this helps you to, when you understand how they write the marking scheme, you understand the approach, how to organize your answer, right? So no training program, that means eroding the culture of diligence and responsibility. So that again, change in culture and effect of changing of the culture. So that's, remember, the question is this one. The question is, you have been asked to explore how the issues, so how these issues identified as the factor leads to the so eventually lead to the data breach that affect the culture. So this A leads to change in culture and eventually leads to data breach. So, I mean, if you understand what they want, then you may structure your answers in a more organized way. So again, you look at this one, cut staff culture, and what's the change in the culture, insecure, job stability, institutional knowledge. And these are the things that is not in the notes, not in anywhere. This is something that you need to apply, right? So that makes this subject a little bit more difficult because there's no standard answer. It's quite open-ended in that sense. So you have to discuss the effect of cost cutting on the culture of a company. Then you have to be more I mean, I don't want to say innovative, but to be more adaptable, to see that to meet the requirement of the questions. So lastly, you can see lowering the staffing level, that is cutting the staff level, how it affects the culture, and how eventually these things will affect the data breaches. So hopefully by looking at the way the model answer structure, how they structure the model answer, that reminds you how to approach your question. So again, this is demonstrated in the marking scheme that they're addressing the questions, the core requirement. So how the identified issues impact the culture and ultimately contributing to the data breach. So you have to read the question very carefully, you understand the question, and then when you try to structure your answers, you will know how to meet the requirement of the questions. Otherwise, you may get lost easily. All right, so that ends our discussion on part C. We look at the part section D, which is about the strategic choices and developing strategies. So this is about the evaluations of different strategic alternatives available to the company, and you have to advise which one is good, the pros and cons of different strategies. So for this type of questions, you really need to read in details about the facts, what are the hints, what are pros and cons, and you have to apply this to the facts in the questions. So basically, this part is usually integrated with the other sections. So this part of the syllabus seldom have one standalone question on itself. Sometimes they have to integrate this part with other sections. So you don't have a separate 25 marks on this type of on these sections. So usually it's built in when you do your discussions. You build in a big 25 marks questions, and you can discuss about 10 marks or 5 marks on these sections. So overall speaking, these sections, which is called assessing the alternative strategies, it involves evaluating and selecting the most suitable pathway for organization growth and competitive advantage. The two parts in here, which is the assessing the strategic choices and the strategic development. So to give you a framework for assessing the different strategies, you define the directions for executing your plans. So strategic choices focus on identifying viable options such as market penetrations, product development, and diversifications, whereas strategic development explores how those choices are implemented through internal growth, mergers, alliance, and structures evaluations. So together they ensure the company is not only choose the right strategy, but also develop the capability and partnerships needed to deliver the result. So for the first part, there are 4 big topics in here, which is a scope of the choices, business level strategies, corporate level strategies, and internationalizations. So it outlines the key areas that the company must consider when selecting the strategic directions. So it covers the formulations of business strategies by using methods like organic growth and alliance, and directional options like market penetrations, diversifications, and you can use tools like Ansoff Matrix and Porter's generic strategies to help you to organize and assess the competitive positioning and the growth positions. So the topic highlights the importance of aligning all the business functions and sustaining competitive advantage through innovations, value chain analysis, and process re-engineering. So as usual, we take a very quick look at the syllabus first before we look at big questions. So firstly is a scope of the choices. So what are the scope of the choices? The key areas that they have to consider is a business strategy. So business strategy involves defining long-term goals and objectives of their organizations, and it determines the actions required to achieve those objectives. Now, for example, a retail company may set a business strategy to expand its online presence by launching the e-commerce platform, and hopefully this could increase the market share and the revenue. So that's an example of business strategies. Now, strategic methods usually include approaches like organic growth, merger, acquisitions, partnering with other institutions or alliance to achieve the organizational goals. So a tech firm may pursue organic growth by investing in the research and development and create the innovative products. Or it can opt with other strategic alliance with other companies to enter into the market. So they can think of different methods to implement the strategies. Strategic directions basically refers to the path where you choose to achieve your goal, just like market penetrations, product development, market development, etc. So these are the ends of matrix. It's about the different ways to penetrate into the market. For example, the food and beverage company may adopt strategic directions of market development by introducing the products to the international market, or leveraging the brand reputations to attract the new customers. I think you understand these terms. Market penetrations basically means to increase the market shares. Well, you can use different methods like, say, competitive pricing, advertising, sales promotion. So these are some of the standard strategies to enable you to penetrate the market. So product development focuses on creating new or improved products so as to meet the existing target. Market development entails entering into the new market, and diversifications involving new market with new products. Now, driving the business forward. So how can you drive the business forward? The whole business approach ensures that all the departments and functions are aligned with the organization's strategies and goals. Research R&D drive innovations, enabling the company to create new products. And so matrix, I think we've discussed earlier. Advantage, constraint of different directions. So you have to discuss the advantages, the pros and cons based on the facts of the questions. So each strategic directions offers unique advantages, such as growth potential or risk diversification, but also come with constraints like resources requirement and market uncertainties. Then we have this business level strategies, which refers to the scope of the business level, focuses on the competitive advantage, for example, through cost leadership, differentiations, and organization focus. Recognitions of strategic business units. So SBUs are distinct units within the company. So each of its own strategy, objectives, and resources, allowing to have a tailored approach for different markets. So, for example, a multinational company may have the SBUs for the food products, personal care products, or health care products. So it will address diverse market needs. I think we've discussed Porter generic strategy options earlier. Cost leadership means the lowest cost producer. Differentiations that means you are offering unique products at a higher cost, a premium pricing. Organizational focus. That means you focus on the specific market segments, or you tailor your product or services towards a niche market, niche audience. Issues associated with combining strategies, so that will lead to conflicts and trade-off, uh, such as balancing cost efficiency with differentiations. Situations where a combination strategy is an advantage is, for example, it may be advantageous in dynamic market where flexibility and adaptability are more crucial. And then how organization attempts to sustain competitive advantage over time. I mean, that's related to the sustainability issues that we have discussed earlier in section C. Value chain analysis, again, that's a Porter's value chain analysis. And then we have this, business process re-engineering, which you redesign the business process to improve your efficiency, quality, and customers' satisfactions. So the principle of BPR is to focus on rethinking and radically redesigning the process so as to achieve a significant improvement in the performance. Issues associated with BRP, well, there are challenges such as resistance to change. Again, that could be a question related to change management in section F. High implementation cost and low potential disruptions. So maybe because of the change in the BLP, maybe there's a resistance from the employees for fear of job loss, and therefore you need to have a more effective change management. Now we have the corporate level of strategies and the models. The corporate level strategy involves decisions about the overall direction of the company. So it involves, say, things like diversification, acquisitions or resource allocations, just like Amazon has diversified its business from e-commerce to cloud computing, entertainment, logistics. So this shows you about the breadth of the corporate level strategy. Blue ocean strategies basically focuses on creating new market spaces and opportunities so as to avoid competitions in the saturated markets. So basically, it encouraged the companies to innovate in ways to make the competitions irrelevant by redefining the customer's value or combining our existing offering in a new way. Dimensions for realizing and delivering values from blue ocean strategies. You realize these strategies from blue ocean strategy that involve innovations, differentiations, and creating a demand in an untapped market. Reality of concept. So while blue ocean strategy offers a significant potential, it may require substantial investment in innovations, and it carries the risk of market uncertainty. So maybe you have to educate your customers about your new product when you have initial launch, right? For example, in the early days of EV, the electric vehicles, uh, the I mean the customers will have to learn how to use this new product. Corporate parenting involved managing the portfolio of business units to create value through synergies and shared resources. So it focuses on how the parent company can support and enhance the performance of the subsidiaries. So the corporate parenting can add or destroy values. Uh, that depends on, for example, if you do centralizations and you can save the cost, then that would add values, right? So conversely, if the value can be destroyed if the parent imposes very rigid control and strategies that would stifle innovations, or seen in some conglomerate where unrelated business unit suffers from lack of autonomy uh, or strategic fit. Portfolio analysis and BCG. So BCG refers to dog. Dog is low market growth, low uh, market share. Cash cow. Cash cow is low market growth, high market share. Problem child. There's a or question mark. These are the business unit with low market shares but um, high growth market. And stars, these are uh, business units with high market shares in the growth market. Internationalizations as strategic options. So you have to distinguish international and global strategy. So international strategy usually focus on adapting your products to individual market. With global strategy, you just standardize your offering across the market. Um, you have to distinguish the between international and global market. The Madonna example is international strategies. Uh, maybe when they are considering the core brand identity, that's the global strategy. Drivers for internationalizations and market drivers include customers' demand for product and services. Cost drivers involve achieving economy of scale. Government drivers include in trade policies, incentives. Competitive drivers uh, respond to global competitors. Internationalization strategies will include things like export, domestic complex export, and global strategies. So we have the simple export, the multi-domestic strategy, complex export, and global strategy. So there are different types of export strategies. So that's the part on the choices. And then we'll look at the strategic development. Strategic development basically um, well, refers to how you develop your strategy. So first, let's look at the pathways to strategic alliance. Planning the route involve clear, uh, clear objective, milestones, and resources required to achieve strategic goals. Organic development involves growing the organization through internal resources and capability. Dealing with the known focus on leveraging the existing strength and capability, and staggered investment involve the phased allocation of resources to manage risk and ensure sustainable growth, minimize disruptions, basically ensures that the growth initiative do not negatively impact the ongoing operations. Self-reliance emphasis on the internal resources and capability to drive growth. Strategy focus ensure that the growth initials align with the company's long-term strategies. Cultural maintenance basically refers to preserving the company's values and things like that. And then with merger and acquisitions, vertical, horizontal, and conglomerate mergers. Motive will include growth, financial gains, managerial objective, and stakeholder interest. Issues that can determine growth, success, or failure will include cultural alignment, effective integrations through due diligence. The importance of effective due diligence process, because it ensures that the potential risk and opportunities are thoroughly evaluated. And then we have the strategic alliances, rationale for strategic alliances. Rationale enables the organizations to access a new market, share resources, and achieve collective advantages. Collective strategies focuses on the achieving shared goal, where collaborative advantage leverages on the strength of each of the partners. Types of strategic alliance will include customer and network, supply and network, and joint ventures. So success factors will include clear objective, effective communications, and alignment of interest. Advantage and disadvantage of alliance. You think of a thing like a sharing of resources, market access, and there may be conflict and dependency risks. And then we have this align the objective, ensure that the company structure and strategy are mutually supportive. Then we have this projecting performance, evaluating the different options by looking at the performance, the KPIs, scenario building, decision tree approach. It's very. You may be asked to design the KPI for the company. Evaluating criteria assess viability of the options, which includes the suitability, acceptability, and feasibility. Suitability assess whether the strategy aligns with the organization goal. Acceptability evaluate the stakeholder support and the risk. Feasibility examines the resources availability, and the implementation challenges. And then we have this strategy of real options. Real options include delayed, abandoned, lift, escalators, and stairs, provided flexibility in the strategic decision making. And then probably maybe I just explain each a little bit more. Delay means postponing your decision to gather more information in order to reduce the uncertainty. Abandon means discontinuing your strategy, which is no longer viable. Lift means scaling up your successful strategy to achieve greater impact. Escalator really involves gradually increasing the investment in the strategy uh, because it proves to be successful. Stairs means incremental steps to implement a strategy. You have to balance the risk and the reward. And then we have evaluating principles. Consistency ensure that the strategy aligns with the organization values and objective. I think this has been come up for quite a number of times. So whenever there's a strategy, you can think of whether it could align with the objectives and the values. Consultants evaluate the harmony between the strategy and the external environment, right? So, for example, the EV, the electric vehicle. So, the strategy to launch EV will align with the shift towards sustainability. Advantages assess the potential benefits and the competitive edge offered by the strategies. Feasibility examines the practicality and resource requirement. The human psyche influences decision-making through bias, emotion, and perceptions. And the drivers for consistency include stakeholder expectations, owner priorities, and the importance of applying cautions ensures that the decisions are well informed and you consider the potential risk. So this is pretty much a simpler section that covers not a lot of things, very general things in here. So we go back and take a look at one of those questions and probably see how this sort of question are being asked. For example, in this question 5, you're asked to prepare a paper about strategic planning. So in this paper, you have to examine the shortcomings and challenges faced by the company and propose actions that could be taken. So you make reference to appropriate strategic tools and analyze the situations to develop the business strategy. So it's about business strategy. Very clearly, is about the different choices of strategies. But you can see that this question 5 is not a standalone section D questions. It's 25 marks question, but I think some 10 marks will be allocated to section A, which is strategic planning. So sections D will be the main focus, but you need to discuss the planning aspect because it says very clearly it's a strategic planning. So it's a combination of section A and section D. You have to think about, say, strategic leadership system and evaluate the different options, the choices, and driving the business forward. Question 6 in here, you can see that this actually is a question that combines with what? Let's see. Conduct a strategic analysis, how the strategic options could achieve the required increased income, the different the difficulties we'll face for each of the options, and the actions to pursue this strategy. So it's very clearly stated in here the answer, the the requirement of the answer. But this question again is not a full 25 marks question on section D. I mean, some marks will be allocated to section E, I think about 5 marks or so. No, I mean the scope of the strategic choices, driving business forward, business level strategy, internationalization as a strategic option. So this question, maybe we can look at this later on. It's about internationalizations as an option in strategies. But you have to determine the appropriate structure. Maybe there's some discussion on section E also. I mean, again, this is not a full 25 marks questions. Usually, section D is integrate with other discussions as well. And then this question to ask you about the strategic choices. When you see the choices, word choices, options, etc., then probably that gives you a hint that this is a section D questions. Decision develop different strategy, that sort of thing. So, I mean, this is a question two is require you to make strategic choices to guide the company's future directions. Very rarely do you have this full 25 marks question on section D, right? So you can see that it's a bit difficult questions, because you need to know the other parts as well. You have a full 25 marks questions. Well, again, we just pause for a moment and look at one of the questions we mentioned earlier, which is the section, question 5 of 2024 June questions. Again, it just gives you 1 minute. Try to draft the outline answer. As usual, underline the action verb, identify the parts of the syllabus, and read the question very carefully. So it just gives you 1 minute. Okay, I think this is quite a simple questions. The structure is given to you very clearly. So you have been asked to conduct a strategic analysis for the university and provide advice whether the options can achieve the required increase in the outcome. So you have to evaluate the options. So that is the section D, and the difficulties that you will face with the options and the actions you would adopt. How would you pursue the strategies? I mean, this question is good because it really breaks down the sort of things you need to answer, and if you just follow the structure, then probably you will get the what the examiners want, right? So what are different options? What are the difficulties that you will face for each option? So you have to discuss options by options to think about the difficulties in that they will face, and what is the action, how you can overcome those difficulties. I mean, if you read the questions very easily, you can see very clearly that these are probably the problems of the company. So these are because they to reach, in here it says that to reach sustainability, it needs to keep increasing income by 25%. But these are basically the problems, which are the price inflations, lack of spaces for accommodations, no way to expand further, resistance from the town because people uh, resist that there's so many students around, and a desire by the government to reduce the overseas student visa. So basically, you are expected to discuss some of these as the difficulties faced by your options. So you have to, I mean, this is quite simple. You just simply pick up the reference part and discuss this as an option. And then in here it says these are the possible choices. So you are given a very clear structure of the questions. That there are choices. That the choices are stated very clearly in here. So the options are stated very clearly in here. So so you just discuss each of these one by one, and you just discuss. So these are the options, and you discuss the difficulties of the options, and you discuss the actions that you should adopt in pursuing the strategy. So if you look at the marking scheme, which is in here, they discuss the options. I mean, then you have the options, the difficulties, and how you overcome the strategy. So I mean, if you just follow what the question is asking, they basically structure your answers already. So if you follow this pattern, then probably you will be getting in the right directions. Whether you can answer or not is another question, but at least your structure is correct. So we can see that you're given the options, and these are the difficulties. So you have to bring some of this point for the difficulties. So this is a difficulty. So you have the difficulties in here, but which point is relevant to which difficulty? Then you have to match them together. Um, so these are the different options. So maybe we look at one of the answers, and here I don't go through with you all the all the full answers, but you can see in here how they structure the answers, right? Say oversee campus development. So that is one of the options in here. You have to develop the overseas campus development. Now, it's very strange that this is not explicitly mentioned in the fact of the questions. You're given the problems, and this is one of the possible options available. You develop the campus because because of the problem. I mean, in that is faced with difficulties. All right, for example, the staff, because you cannot I mean, there's a reduction of the overseas student visas, and there's a resistance by the people in the town to change it into a student city, and these sort of things. a lack of accommodation, new accommodation. So that makes it very difficult to have a new campus development. So one of the options is the collaboration with a partnership in other areas. So this is the overseas campus development. So this is one of the options. Well, you can see in here in the answer, you can see in here that there's an increased number of students traveling, increase international to gain education. Now, this is a fact which is not basically not mentioned anywhere in your question, and this is something you have to deduce or from the general knowledge. The opportunity is there because people would like to study, people would like to learn about English and maybe get a reputations from an English university. So this is something new. This is not something that you can read or read from the study guide. You may not have this example from the study guide. So so if they can do this locally, they don't need to go out to travel. That would be a good point, a bonus point. So you have the international students studying in their home countries. I mean, that's one issue. So that's an opportunity. The difficulty may be that you can see in here requires financial investment, regulatory compliance, and cultural adaptations because you're talking about overseas or internationalizations. So you need to think about these overseas things. So challenges may include navigating a foreign legal regulatory framework, funding resources, and building partnerships. So that's the difficulties. And the possible challenges solution will be doing market research first, the establish a partnership with local universities, which is have reputation, and undertake risk management assessment and things like that. Now, what I want to say is that for this type of questions about the discussion part, you can see really in here that there is something which is not explicitly mentioned in the fact or in the case, but you have to understand. So this shows that you understand the principles. It's more important than reciting something from the study guide. Once you get your structure correct, then probably you can make a reasonable answers to this type of question. You may not have all the points in the marking scheme, but as long as you can give a reasonable answers, by answers, that's very good enough. That's it. So the campus development will be the tap to the market, international market. So it's market development. You explore new market, and in our discussion we mentioned how to do it. So it's a strategic move, the strategic directions. How to achieve this strategic directions. So basically, this is the point on strategic choices that were mentioned earlier. So, but if you want to establish overseas campus, it involves a lot of money, but you don't have enough money, so there's a difficulty mentioned in the questions. Staff may be resistant to relocations or international assignment. So the difficulty is that they don't want to leave the home countries, and they have to conduct market research, etc., etc. So you have to take actions and comply with the local regulations. So, I mean, what I say is that there are some things in here which is not explicitly mentioned in the case, and then you have to think, and you have to give a reasonable answer. All right. So, for example, it doesn't say very clearly that you have to have a physical overseas campus, but that's suggested in the terms in here. That it says a global collaborations work in the. I mean, this phrase overseas campus development is actually this one: global collaboration and partnering through the growth in areas which would require staff to travel overseas and with overseas partners to support overseas partners. I mean, in this type of question, they actually invite you to think about the solutions, options to develop the overseas uh, uh, campus in there, you know. So it's not very straightforward answer. You need to explore further. You need to expand this and think about the physical presence abroad, and that requires and the pros and cons of the physical presence abroad. So that it implies a more resourceful, intensive approach. Um, the extension may stem from the how the consultant's interpretation of how to maximize the income growth and the market reach and all sorts of things. So you can discuss something about staff relocations, uh, international assignment. Again, this is something um, you have to think it during the examinations. No, there's no standard. This will not. There's no standard answers to this. This is some of the points you need to think on the spot in the examinations. So you have to explore and reflect a deeper strategic extrapolations to address the income issues. So long as you have a good discussion, I think marks will be given because it challenges your ability to apply the given information effectively. The question can be very complex, but you require to interpret the facts. That's actually test your ability to interpret the facts and apply the facts creatively. So that makes the question more difficult to answer. But don't worry if your answers does not coincide 100% with the marking scheme. So long as you give reasonable answers, marks will be given. So that's it for section D, which is a short sections.